The human race, a species so complex, so advanced, so superior, that it was said we would one day inherit the stars. A species built on intuition and innovation, feats made possible thanks to our built-in supercomputer which we call the mind. No other creature in the history of the world has come even relatively close to the level of intelligence possessed by mankind, and it's safe to say we have not took that for granted. From our ancestors using the materials around them to craft the earliest, most primitive form of tools, all the way to modern day scientists etching closer and closer each day to deciphering the foundations of our universe. However, as monumentally impressive as this is, as vital as our scientists are, our engineers, our doctors, to the progression of our population as a whole, it fails to acknowledge a significant part of the human experience, the part which unites us and brings meaning to the very word human, the groundworks of all the world's cultures and traditions. It's the part which our scientists and engineers are working so hard to protect, a physical vessel for the choices, visions, ambitions of all of the generations before ours. Mankind's greatest invention, whether it be music, cinema, painting or poetry. I am, of course, talking about art. Now, this is a word that's true meaning is constantly changing, shifting and adapting alongside the technology from which it is created. It's a necessary and vital process, and the reason why art has remained a core pillar of our culture through the ages. However, recently, one piece of tech in specific has been inflicting great panic within the community. The popularization of AI is viewed by many as deserved and marvelous. Tedious tasks which would take the hand hours to complete, now finished in seconds with the click of a button. It seems that everywhere you look, the holy grail which is AI is shoved down your throat, every company racing to milk this new profit-spewing machine. And after all, why wouldn't they? A universal employee capable of completing any task, anytime, for free. What could possibly go wrong? It's not as if a soulless corporation would allow their employees to be replaced by robots, or use more water than a nuclear reactor. Regardless, it doesn't change the fact that every industry is slowly being knocked down, one by one. Computer scientists are practically programming their replacements, and artists are under more threat than ever in an already unreliable and risky industry. As drastic and scary as this sounds, it's far from the end for the creative arts. I mean, do you really think that centuries of films and songs and poems and paintings existed through almost every event conceivable, from early cave paintings to the wonders of modern art, only to be extinguished by a sequence of code, an empty shell mimicking human creativity? Of course not, and it all boils down to one simple fact. AI art doesn't even exist. It never has, and it never will. Look, there's a strong chance that you're confused by that last statement, or think that it's some kind of cryptic, elusive metaphor. You'd be mistaken to think so. In the clearest, most literal way possible, artificial intelligence is incapable of producing art. In fact, generative AI is the exact opposite of art. It's a tool for mass production, the result of greedy corporations finally attempting to automate the production of art, an inherently human industry. You could ask AI to generate a beautiful landscape, complete with stunning colours, a perfect composition, but it wouldn't be art. It lacks soul, a purpose for its creation, the very things that make it unique. Technical brilliance is not sufficient enough to replace the meaning behind a piece. A key example being these hand paintings, discovered in a cave in Argentina several millennia after their estimated creation, around 7300 BC, granting it the nickname Cueva de las Manos, or Cave of Hands. They echo the ancient hunter-gatherer tribes which once inhabited the cave thousands of years ago, during a primitive age of extreme climate and survival of the fittest. Despite the true reason for the painting's creation being lost to time, for one reason or another, our ancestors thought it was necessary to pause their primal antics in order to leave a message, using their limited surroundings to permanently etch their presence into the earth which once sheltered them from a ruthless era. Their own little corner of the world, which was evidently forgiving enough to allow for the luxury of art to be pursued freely, without the threat of the modern age. But that's the thing, it's not a luxury or a privilege, it's human nature. Rich kids being able to pursue art for a living may be seen as entitlement by some, but it seems to me like a reflection of the fact that a human that doesn't have to worry about money will often choose art. The fact is, everyone is an artist until rent is due, not because it's profitable or efficient, but because humans are social creatures, creative creatures, confined to a society so driven by the mundane constructs of everyday life, that to express ourselves freely through art is like a gasp of fresh air. It's this raw, unfiltered passion which separates the work of humans from that of AI. Directors don't choose to make movies because it's easy or because it pays well, despite the fact that it pays ridiculously well. They do it because they enjoy it. In 1978, a young man was sitting in his maths class alongside 30 other pupils, just as every other high school kid was doing at the ripe age of 15. However, there was something different, something unique about this kid. He had no time for maths, nor did he wish he did. Inside of his notebook were no equations, but scripts, rough ideas for the blockbuster screenplays he knew he would go on to produce. A few weeks pass, and he finally decides that education just isn't for him, dropping out of high school to pursue his filmmaking dream, sacrificing a stable future for a dangerous and risky industry. A risk he was more than willing to take. Fast forward 47 years, and you'll find that the risk was more than worth it, as Quentin Tarantino is now worth roughly $120 million, and respected as one of the greatest directors of not only the current decade, but all of cinema's history. Cult classics like Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs and Kill Bill all lay comfortably under his belt, a near seamless filmography in reward for Tarantino's endless decades of dedication to his art. But it's not the money which makes him a good director, nor his 170 awards, including 2 Academy Awards and 3 Golden Globes. It's not even the quality of his movies, which is undeniably high, ignoring Jackie Brown of course. The thing that separates Tarantino from others, and cements him as one of the greatest minds within his field, is his relentless passion for what he does. It's his ability to persevere, even in the absence of the prior achievements mentioned. Not for some money-lusting corporation, but for himself, to express his ideas in a way he chooses. That is an ability so exclusively human that we often undermine or forget the possibilities accessible by every single person through art. More importantly, it's an ability which AI could never recreate. But Tarantino isn't the only example of our unbreakable connection to art. In fact, look in any corner of the industry and you'll find powerful stories told by powerful people who listen to their creative instinct instead of compromising for an ordinary life. Music is arguably the most chased after and consumed form out of all of the arts. Upon quick investigation, you'll find idols such as Beethoven, widely recognized as the greatest composer to ever walk the earth, famously losing his hearing in his 20s, yet continuing to produce the most iconic and advanced symphonies of his time, which have remained legendary to this day. A slightly less known and more modern instance comes through the globally loved Ed Sheeran, who I'm sure you recognise thanks to his award-winning hits, which you learn off by heart thanks to hours of your mum blasting them in the car. However, what I'm sure you didn't know is that Ed spent the majority of his teen years homeless, hungry and cold, sleeping outside venues or on his friends' sofas while wearing a mask to conceal the struggle as he performed weekly to humble crowds. Despite all of the odds being stacked against him, as we all know, Ed Sheeran clung tight to his dream and his guitar, escaping poverty and transforming into a beacon of hope for those who seem trapped in his familiar past. If I wanted this video to be 2 hours long, I could cover hundreds of individuals from all kinds of fields, such as Robert Downey Jr.'s controversial drug and crime-riddled history, or J.K. Rowling's desperate and relentless push for the Harry Potter series to be published, despite 12 prior rejections. However, I'm sure that by now you get the point, so for the sake of retention, we can continue. People love to say, art isn't a real job. They fail to see the significance of its creation and the negative effects of AI, all while listening to music on their drive home from work, ready to watch a movie as they decompress from their soul-draining 9 to 5. But remember, these forms of media consumed by the billions daily, they're not real jobs. Who cares if the pencil is replaced by a prompt? A painting's a painting at the end of the day. Despite the sarcastic tone of my past few points, as hollow and debunkable as they are, believe it or not, there are real people who possess these beliefs. Perhaps it's because they don't share an equal passion for art in general, or a specific craft. Someone who prefers books to movies may feel slightly less bothered and threatened by Tilly Norwood, the latest test puppet for artificial intelligence companies, an AI actress, theoretically capable of starring in any project without the cost of paying real performers or managing time. Of course, it doesn't take a genius to know that any studio or director who stupidly decides to use this soulless gimmick would receive a career-ending amount of backlash and controversy. Why? Because a demographic who are willing to turn a blind eye, or even encourage this behaviour, will always be present in some form or another. But unlike the guy who prefers books to movies, there are millions of avid, devout film lovers who refuse to sit back and surrender their beloved art to the hands of greedy, cash-grabbing corporations who attempt to intrude into such a history-rich, diverse, and widely followed industry. These fans are the glue which provides creators with the fuel they need to keep creating. Without a loyal audience, it's impossible for a creative industry to stay afloat. It's why films which flop rarely get renewed for a sequel, while box office successes flourish and receive the green light to invest hundreds of millions into broadening the franchise. Risky, but worth it in a society who consume a good movie like termites. I'm sure you can see why forcing AI into the meticulous crafting of these would never work. It doesn't matter how realistic, efficient or cheap the model is, it all boils down to the fans. It's a two-way relationship. Movie studios provide fans with new substance, and in return the fans provide funding for future projects through buying tickets, merchandise, etc. This is, of course, assuming the film is of high enough quality to convince people to pay to watch. In the case of AI, in a real-life scenario, within hours of the new technology being revealed, there will be floods of backlash online, scrutinizing those responsible and showing support to the actors and actresses, editors and writers, camera operators and more who dedicate their hearts to perfecting the film which they are so passionately working on. Upon the release, ratings would be catastrophically low, regardless of the movie's contents. Critics won't support the automation of an art. They built a career of witnessing the beauty which cinema has to offer through months of intense production. Clearly, no other studio would be desperate enough to make the same mistake in the future, betraying the talented individuals within the community as well as the fans who support them. And to those who still sit unaffected and unbothered, respectfully, your opinion is irrelevant. The Dutch billionaires at Zoika, who created and coded Tilly Norwood with the belief that she would take the industry by storm, their opinions are also irrelevant in the face of an audience of fans. The bottom line remains: no public support, no funding, which makes the continued use of AI a pointless and non-renewable act with no benefits and maximum avoidable controversies. Unless these companies begin designing entirely AI viewers to watch their AI movies, creating a depressing and dystopian loop. But let's not give them ideas. I think it's important to note the fact that AI is not entirely bad. In fact, the concept of artificial intelligence has been around long before you or I were alive to dispute it. The earliest records stem from Alan Turing's 1940 ideas of machine intelligence, when he and his team at Bletchley Park used computer methods revolutionary at the time to break the German Enigma code. This laid the groundwork for the 1956 Dartmouth workshop, where researchers discussed the potential creation of a thinking machine. Since then, artificial intelligence has been vital in the progression of technology as a whole, working behind the scenes in ways often overlooked. Email filters which automatically filter out spam, facial recognition to unlock your phone, Netflix recommending the perfect movie based on your watch history. The truth is, you've been using AI your entire life. Perhaps you didn't realize it. I mean, those examples aren't particularly noteworthy or extraordinary, especially in comparison to what likely springs to your mind when you hear AI. That's because the AI which you're thinking of is new. It's different to the narrow AI just discussed, which has existed for decades, running algorithms and making the boring technical side of business less boring, all the while hidden behind a screen of code, practically invisible to the average user. It was a remarkable and pivotal advancement for the human race, a computer model capable of simulating human intelligence in order to complete a task, and then, as of 1967, capable of simulating language and communication through conversational chatbots. But enough about narrow AI. That's not what we've been discussing for the past 10 minutes. Although it's still used in the modern day, and its disappearance would devastate and topple every corner of the digital world, the era of craze for this basic form of AI has been and gone, overshadowed by a newer, shinier younger sibling. It's what AI has come to be associated with primarily in the modern day, despite its relatively recent creation. Generative AI has always been inevitable with the rapid development of machine intelligence, and yet now that it's here, many would pay for its disappearance, including me. Unlike earlier forms which came with uses and quantifiable needs for its implementation, any and all desperate justifications for this disgusting service fall short into shallow excuses, more often than not echoes from rich tech billionaires attempting to gloss over the glaring holes in generative AI and keep the money flowing in. It starts subjective and relatively light in comparison to later issues, yet still pressingly important nonetheless. It goes without saying that this way of generating media is outrageously crushing and borderline sacrilegious towards every creative art. People don't draw because it's quick or easy, they draw because they enjoy the process of getting to choose the next step. Each line of ink on a page. They get to make decisions based on the previous sketches in order to take the piece in a new direction. On a sculpture, you can see where the sculptor has decided to slice away at the clay in the cheek area to create a more chiseled jawline. You can see the knife marks, fingerprints and notches on the skin, which makes the sculpture anatomically imperfect, but artistically superb. something which AI could never understand nor reciprocate, because it's the appreciation and acceptance of these imperfections which makes art so specifically human. When someone looks upon a great piece of work and begins to notice tiny individual flaws, the art is no longer just a uniform canvas in a museum, but the culmination of a person's ideas, decisions, actions over time. Suddenly, the work isn't so alien and transcendent, but proof that anyone can create art, and the creators behind art which we admire aren't so different from ourselves. A computer focuses on perfection, it's programmed to, which on paper isn't such a bad quality. However, you have to question who the customer is. As previously discussed, no filmmaker, no painter, no musician with a genuine passion for their craft is going to use generative AI. It's completely contradictory and useless, not to mention the uproar and betrayal which would ensue. Right now, AI forms of media are trending. As with all new toys and gadgets, everyone wants to get a piece of AI to see what this new, all-powerful tool is about. It's not uncommon to be scrolling on TikTok and find a video of SpongeBob being arrested on bodycam footage to some brain-rotting AI-generated techno beat in the background. However, trends pass, and eventually people are going to get bored of this slop on their For You page, and these videos will no longer be worth paying a subscription to an AI company in order to generate. The question is, what then? Will generative AI vanish? Of course not. The harsh truth is that it's here to stay. It's impossible to unengineer something. However, just because it exists doesn't mean it will be forced down our throats for eternity. No, I believe that art will stay unaffected, with perhaps a rise in small pro-AI groups, as are already present on sites like Reddit. However, traditional and digital artists won't give up their way of art to make room for more corporate soulless slop, as if the world needs any more of that. And that goes for all fields, for cinema and comics, poetry, drawing, rapping, jazz, whatever. If you have a passion for something, then pursue it. You will always be able to pick up a guitar and learn to play. Just because AI can too, it doesn't mean you shouldn't. If your painting isn't coming out the way you'd hoped, don't be disheartened or turn to a keyboard, because even a crayon flower drawing by a toddler possesses more meaning and artistic value than an AI-generated Mona Lisa. Before ending, it's vital to address the other problems which come with generative AI. While the last few points have depended on an appreciation for art and for human creativity, which, if you've watched to this point, I'd hope you have some of. The next couple don't ask for as much, requiring only human decency and basic empathy to understand. It's a shame to leave a video which has, for the most part, been celebrating art and the human mind on such a dark note, but more awareness has to be brought. I'm sure you're aware of the water controversy. In order to generate videos and images to such realistic levels in such little time, absurdly massive data centers are utilized. Data centers which would overheat and combust if not cooled with ridiculous quantities of water, roughly 1.5 liters per image. But water can be reused. This is such a non-issue, is the most common counter-argument. But just a minute of research will tell you that although the same water can be cycled through a system a few times, after a while bacteria buildups cause the water to become permanently toxic and useless to the environment. Now, I'll admit, this is a factor which I personally don't feel too strongly about, nor is it the point of this video. However, it is important to be aware of the water usage of this seemingly infinite resource behind the scenes. What's more important to be aware of is the disturbing, sometimes illegal ways which this tool can be and is used when placed in the wrong hands. As we all know, the internet is home to a plethora of the weirdest, most deranged people on this planet. A place to covet and hide, away from a society which likely shames and ridicules for the vile nature of some of these individuals. I won't go into detail, but I'm sure you can imagine the sickening possibilities of these people being able to generate anything until their black heart's content. More and more cases of women having to address fake, explicit images of themselves are occurring. I don't have to explain why this is utterly petrifying. And the worst part is that this is no longer a scary threat. It's a modern issue which is happening globally, right now. Parents now have to be cautious when posting videos of their own children on social media due to the possibilities of AI. There is an argument that this is an individual problem, not one directly linked to artificial intelligence. I think that it's a fair balance of both. The problem is that this service is freely available at the fingertips of anyone who desires it. Unfortunately, that includes sex offenders and other dungeon dwellers who don't deserve internet access. If that doesn't make you think that generative AI should be illegal, or at the very least restricted, then I strongly advise you reconsider. Circling back to the cave paintings from earlier, I think that there's something so symbolic about the earliest form of art being hand paintings, and the hardest thing for AI to replicate also being hands. I think it shows how art is exclusively for mankind, no matter how hard AI tries. A major defense for generative AI is that it makes art more accessible, but the truth is, art always has been accessible to everyone. Maybe you can't see it, or face physical barriers like war or disability. Art is still present. It's present in Tuvalu, with dance and photography allowing locals to savour the short time they have left with their homeland before rising sea levels strip them from their country. It's present in Syria, where national filmmakers continue to document their war-ridden environment despite limited access to their own land. It's present in Born to Perform, a dance group which made it all the way to the Britain's Got Talent semi-finals in 2022, refusing to let the fact that each and every member dealt with disabilities such as Down syndrome stop them from expressing their love for art. It's present in every aspect of life, from the grand performances on the West End to a mediocre doodle on the margin of a math book. Art doesn't discriminate because, no matter the scale, it's a subtle reminder that we are all members of one race. It's Earth's universal language, unifying all 8 billion of us with a constant reminder that despite all the negativity we see on the news around the world, something as simple as sharing a song with a stranger around a fire encapsulates the human experience and leaves both people with a memory which will forever be intertwined with that song. AI can generate a piece of graffiti on a derelict wall, but it can never stand in the same spot as the daring artist who risked the rest to leave their mark. Until a machine can be vulnerable and accountable, all that it produces will be a mere shell, attempting to imitate the impossibly complex nature of human art.